A U.S. Senator just asked a Pentagon nominee the simplest question imaginable. Would you carry out a war crime if ordered? What followed stunned the room and raised terrifying questions about who's being put in charge of America's military.
Thank you very much, Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do echo my colleagues' concern that President Trump is marching us towards another forever war in Venezuela and throwing around threats to do the same elsewhere, from Greenland to Colombia to Iran. After 23 years of service in the Army myself, the lessons that I learned as a young lieutenant about the professionalism and code of conduct and ethics of military officers remain with me to this day. I know firsthand the cost in blood that service members and their families suffer when an administration like this one uses military force based on a flimsy pretext. This administration has come up with very questionable legal justifications what they're doing. They've untethered to any real national security threat with no realistic planning about what comes next. The administration says that it's all about warfighters, but we all know that it is fast to betray our warfighters. As we saw with the hearing on domestic deployments that I secured in December, President Trump is comfortable thrusting service members into legally unprecedented situations and leaving them out there to dry without legal protection. In Southcom, this administration's leaders have created questionable legal justifications for the use of military force. They've thrown military commanders under the bus instead of admitting that they likely ordered a war crime, and sidelined critical legal advisors. In fact, the very real reason that we're here today is because the former commander of Southcom, Admiral Halsey, was asked by Sec Def Hegseth to step down after he expressed concerns over the, and I quote, murky legality of the boat strike campaign, end quote, according to the Wall Street Journal. General Donovan, I'm concerned about how this administration might ask you to do what they might ask you to do in this role, given what they asked your predecessor to do. And I want to understand how you would navigate that in a way that would safeguard your oath to the American people and to uphold the Constitution by protecting responsible American use of force and protecting the service members under your command. If ordered by the Secretary to shoot unarmed civilians with no observable weapons who were not presenting any hostile acts of hostile intent, would you relay that order down to your chain of command?
No, Senator.
Thank you. Let's do another example. If ordered by the Secretary of Defense to shoot harassing fire into a city or a village indiscriminately where we are not actively engaged in hostilities, would you issue that order to your subordinates?
Senator, I believe the hypothetical aspect of that question, I have to identify that that is a very significant, serious question that I take to heart. For the fact that the detail and the planning process to get to a point where one of those very hard decisions have to be made, that's a significant effort, a commander-led process in planning to ensure that all aspects of the operation take consideration, to include the legal advice of the legal counsel on that planning staff. My responsibility is to lead that planning staff. I don't believe that that situation you described, Senator, would be something that would happen out of the blue. The conditions had been set. The leaders have been given the authority, the rules of engagement to understand their rules. And I can't commit or comment on a situation that I did not plan, participate in to get to that point of the point of decision that you're referencing, Senator.
I think this is a pretty straightforward answer. Let me try a more straightforward answer. Do you agree there would be a crime in international law under the Geneva Conventions for the United States military to conduct violence toward persons who are taking no active part in hostilities or have laid down their arms? Senator,
again, I would like to really better understand the situation that is being laid out here in the staff planning process that got there to that position before we'd have to make that very hard decision.
Okay. Well, I'm really troubled by that answer because the specific examples I cited are not hypothetical. President Trump pardoned a former Army officer, Clint Lawrence, who was convicted of murder by a jury of his peers for taking these very actions against non-combatants. In 2012, Lawrence ordered his soldiers to fire upon 3 unarmed Afghan men, killing 2 and wounding a 3rd. Lawrence was known to act with impunity. He pointed his weapon at a young child, ordered soldiers to fire from a tower in the general direction of villagers, and lied about receiving hostile fire, and even instructed one of his soldiers to falsify a report after the murders. And this is a man that Sec Def Hegseth calls a good guy. These are the types of disturbing, lawless actions that the Sec Def and the president regularly glorify. Trump has bandied the term hero to describe the likes of Eddie Gallagher, who posed with the body of a deceased teenager and who his fellow Iraq veterans said was, quote, okay with killing anything that moved, end quote. Let's be clear. President Trump is creating a climate in our military where lawlessness is rewarded, not punished. A climate where it is even realistic for me to ask you, what would you do if the President Secretary ordered actions that amount to war crimes? And it disturbs me that you could not answer those last 2 questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tammy Duckworth didn't ask a trick question. She didn't ask a political one. She asked a moral and legal baseline question, the kind every military officer is trained to answer without hesitation. And that's exactly why this exchange is so alarming. When asked whether he would order violence against unarmed civilians, the nominee didn't clearly invoke the Geneva Conventions. He didn't say that would be illegal. He didn't say that would be a war crime. Instead, he deflected, hid behind process, and repeatedly refused to give a direct answer. Duckworth, a combat veteran who lost both legs in service, understood the danger immediately. Because history shows us what happens when commanders don't draw bright red lines. She reminded the room that these aren't hypothetical scenarios. President Trump has already pardoned convicted war criminals, publicly praised them as heroes, and signaled to the military that lawlessness will be rewarded, not punished. That creates a chilling reality. Service members may be ordered to commit illegal acts. Commanders may feel pressured to comply, and accountability may disappear entirely. Duckworth's frustration wasn't political, it was existential. A military that cannot say, no, that would be a crime, is a military at risk of losing its moral authority, its global credibility, and its soul. This wasn't about Venezuela. This wasn't about Trump. This was about whether the U.S. military still understands the difference between lawful force and atrocity. And the nominee's inability to answer should worry every American.